Welcome, my fellow goons and goblins. I come to you today, sitting backwards in this uncomfortably too wide chair, to talk about something that's been bugging me yet again. This time being tanks and tanking. Tanks in raid, dungeons, the role as a whole, the game. Yeah, just tanks in general. So, what's going on with them? Well, before I get too deep into the weeds, I feel like I'm gonna get probably a little aggressively insulting at some point to the developers, to the team, to the children in charge of designing tanks in this game, and I don't want to come across purely like a complete asshole. I really don't. That's why I come to you like this. That's why I come to you in the most non-threatening position I can think of, which is just big youth pastor energy. So, my fellow developers, I come to you with a plea, or perhaps some bargaining can be done. Whatever gets us to a better position than what it is currently right now. Now, I'm not a developer, but I can type a bunch on the internet, so I am there a lot. And if you suffer from potentially a mental illness like I do, maybe you refresh Wowhead a little too much, and you might have seen that there's a tiny little tweak, little golden nugget, little change that they popped out there for us this week via hotfix. That being that threat produced by tanks has gone up. There exists an issue, specifically in dungeons, but it is also present in raid, in that tanks are losing threat. And not just losing threat off the rip of a pull because some horny DPS weigh in and want to play the game too. It's happening in the middle of pulls, 20, 30 seconds into pulls, when people are in cooldowns, when people are hitting big burst windows, and then the nameplates all of a sudden change and snap over aggro to a different member of the team, someone whose role is not to hold the threat of the mobs, someone who wants to run away from those mobs and literally never wants to be touched by them ever again, and it's not fun at all. But it's also a little bit of an issue in raids. I have been so fortunate as to have to try to move some big ass bosses that don't want to take two steps unless you're a mile down the road trying to pull them, like Muggsy or One Arm Bandit, or if they're stuck in the middle of a bunch of spell queued animations and they refuse to walk over to you immediately because they've got to get that cast off, which makes sense, sure. What doesn't make sense is when I walk the 10 yards away while my co-tank is beating the shit out of it, but I need to position the boss because I gotta bait something, move him to a specific ad, or whatever the reason is, and now the nameplate starts changing a little bit. And I'm starting to use taunts not just for swaps, but to maintain the threat on the guy. Is that intentional? Well, if it is, okay, I can sit with that. I don't think it's fun, but I could sit with that. Whereas in the dungeons, it's way more frustrating because it happens non-stop all the time, and a lot of different classes are victims of this when they are in their cooldowns and they're just trying to play the fucking game and do the fun part. The fun part. That's something we're gonna come back to. The fun part. So, what is the fun part right now? In that threat is an issue. I would say there's not one. So they buff the threat, but why does that make me angry? Well, that doesn't make me angry that they're performing these little fixes, but that's all they are going to be. A little fix. It's a Bandaid fix to a rooted problem within the design of the game as a whole. Now, you might think, okay, but they've buffed the threat, so surely that eliminates the issue. Okay, well, stick with me here. Was this a problem in Season 1 to the same extent that it was in Season 2? No, it wasn't. I know because I was doing it then too. It was shittier for different reasons, but it wasn't because of the threat. Season 2, threat has been much more of an issue, especially because there exists some weird lingering bugs on classes that have been around for years that won't go addressed. So it's much more of an issue in Season 2. Well, why is that? Well, that is because as gear inflates further and further and further, DPS, the damage dealers in the group, whose job it is to, I think, deal damage, and when they're trying to do that really well, sometimes they do it too well, at least as far as the system is concerned, because they scale better off of gear. So as seasons go on, as turbo boosts get introduced, you are going to scale faster than tanks do. Their damage does not get amplified as quickly or as much to the same potency that other damage dealers do. Now this affects different tanks in different ways. Of course, everyone's kit is a little bit different. Some people's kits aren't fucking bugged. About a hot fix for those. So what do you think is going to happen when the next season comes? Or when the next turbo boost comes? What do you think will happen? Do you think that they will stop scaling so strongly, or that tanks are going to be able to match their potency and damage and keep up with the threat through this tiny little buff? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think you're going to end up right back at the same issue. And see, the main problem with that is that we'll probably go another 3 or 4 months before it gets fixed again. We're going to be right back in the same situation. So rather than addressing the root cause of the problem, we'll end up being in a situation where we've got to wait again for this to be addressed. So is that satisfactory? I think not. I don't think that that's the path forward. I don't think these are the types of fixes that need to be going in. I think the Band-Aid needs to be ripped off, and we have got to address what is actually the root cause of problems for tanks. The people playing this role within the community, whether it's raids or dungeons, it doesn't matter. It feels like shit to interact with this system where when you are executing your basic rotation, no tank is standing there doing nothing, because you have to be generating things to get mitigation up. If you're a warrior, you need rage. If you're a demon hunter, you need fury, or whatever Illidan calls it. It doesn't matter. If you're a guardian druid, you need rage. If you're a brewmaster, you don't play. You need your resource to be able to dump into your mitigation. You've got to keep up Iron Fur. You got to keep up Demon Spikes. You need shield blocks. You're not doing nothing. So why, when you are already actively engaged in the pack, especially when we're 30 seconds deep onto a poll, do you need to be challenged on threat? Who is this mechanic entertaining? Who is it for? Is it ever fun for people to interact with that? Because it has only ever been frustrating for me, someone playing that role. Are the people designing it also doing that? Do they have to engage with the very same system in the same way right now? Is that necessary? Also, I'm sorry, real quick, just a quick aside. If you hear dogs barking in the background, I'm sorry. My dogs are downstairs watching Bob the Builder, and sometimes they just get really amped up. At the start of the expansion, we already know the massive changes and dumbass decisions they made to take away agency from tanks because they need to suffer more or be at the whims of a different group member, or whatever they were trying to achieve there, whatever they wanted to do other than make tanks fun. I just want to move past all that. I've gone into it in depth and at length in previous videos, so I just want to talk about what are the next steps. What do we do next? So we already know that threat is an issue, right? They readily see that, because otherwise why would they be applying hotfixes for it to buff it by this tiny little limp dick amount? But why is threat a problem? Why is it an issue? Well, that's because of a few different things, and it happens at different moments. It could be because your tank does absolutely shit for damage, because for some reason we refuse to let them also impact the damage meter. The damage dealers pop off and they blow all their cooldowns, and when they're busting nuts, you cannot keep up. Your little 3 mil AoE DPS, whatever you're pulling, is nothing compared to the 200 million blood beast that is staring bullets at you. Additionally, one of the things that happens is when you run away from mobs, say if you're just trying to group stuff up and as you're kind of moving around you get a little bit out of melee range of them, your threat is greatly reduced. You've got to be close to the mobs to maintain a high amount of threat. Okay, that's kind of fine. It's frustrating as shit, especially in like raid situations where I'm trying to move a boss or bait something, but now I've got to worry about my co-tank making the nameplate orange. But lastly, it's the fact that a lot of abilities for tanks, some of their main builders or spenders within their kit that are used for snap threat, to get initial aggro on everything around them, are target capped. They're target capped, but fucking why? Why? Why are we so adverse to letting abilities hit a bunch of targets, especially when the content incentivizes players to a point to pull as much as they can as long as they don't die and they can kill the mobs first? Especially if I'm trying to like keep threat on some priority mobs that have like a bunch of little stupid ass ads running around everywhere, like Dark Flame Cleft, right? Like, I'm not gonna be a guy that goes and buys a potion just to get a little bit more AoE damage on some monsters in that dungeon. I just want to use my fucking kit. I just want a Thunderclap. I just want a Soul Cleave. I just want an Immo Aura. Whatever, Swipe, Thrash. It doesn't matter. No one plays Brewmaster. I already said that joke. But you want to be able to hit all of these mobs to get as much threat as possible because you don't want the monsters to run away from you, and your group doesn't want them to either. I don't even think it should be a fucking thing. I don't even think it should ever be caught in a situation where if I'm doing my basic rotation and using builder spenders, there should never be a fucking chance that they come off of me. But let's say you want to maintain a little bit of that interaction. Okay, can you not make it so dog shit? I know there's a knee-jerk reaction to say, well, if you just make tanks hold threat on anything they pull so long as they're alive, then tanks will just kite all the time and avoid being hit altogether because they've got threat on the mobs. They just have to scoot them around the room and wait until their damage dealers kill them. Okay, well, stay here with me for just one moment. Do you think that if maybe the point of contention for, let's say, timing a high key in Mythic Plus, what if you simply needed to do enough damage to time that key? Huh? Do you think that the tank is going to kite mobs when that damage is needed? Especially, hey, let's go one further. What if we allow tanks to do a reasonable and enticing amount of damage? Do you feel like they would think they're making a difference? Do you think that feels pretty good if you're executing all of your abilities enough so that you can pump out a little bit of damage while still keeping your group alive by grouping things up, getting interrupts off, doing CC rotations, whatever? I mean, you already got to maintain shit like routes. You're probably calling stops or interrupts and shit like that. Whatever you're doing, you got it up here on the dome. You're tracking people's cooldowns, whatever good tanks do. I'm not one of those, but you got a lot of shit on your mind. But if ultimately their goal is to take away some of the mental cognitive load that you need for keeping up with interrupts and stops and watching your players' cooldowns, what's going to be left for you to be able to do? Dear God, I hope it ain't threat. It should just be damage. If you don't want tanks to kite mobs, then make it to where the timer requires that their DPS be there. And to be able to do that well, their DPS should probably matter. Now, I'm not saying that they need to be able to come in there and do the same amount of damage that an enhanced shaman is doing within their ascendance window. That's not what I'm fucking getting at. But why do we have to struggle with the same problem? Now look, if tanks did 80%, 70%, 50% of the amount of damage within burst windows or general pulls, AoE, single target, whatever, do you think that we need a 16.5% threat buff 3 months after the season has started? Do you think we'll need to do that if the damage scaling was just higher out the gate? Maybe not. Maybe we don't have to find ourselves back here yet again mad about what feels like an antiquated system that should have been tossed out or heavily modified a long time ago. Now, I know I'm scoped in on threat right now. There are a lot of other things that I would like to change about the role or dungeons as a whole or raid encounters, whatever. And a lot of that aligns with what Blizzard has stated recently are their goals with removing add-ons that take a lot of the mental load off of you. Less casts, less CC needed, less stops, less shit like that. Yeah, that all sounds good. I am on board with you. And this threat shit seems like it's the next thing to go. Of course, I would like it a lot more if they just straight up reverted a lot of the tank changes that they've made. Because in the end, I don't think any tank players ever wanted to advocate for that sort of thing. I'm not saying make it OP, but god damn it, dude. There's a reason why no one fucking plays this thing. It's one guy in every group, and it's hard to find them sometimes. You only get 2 of them in a raid. I realize you don't need nearly as many of them as you do damage dealers, but you can see that people don't want to play the fucking role for a reason. Whatever that reason may be. If it's frustrating, it's frustrating. And finally, it's not like we're really gaining anything super engaging or cool by maintaining this feature within the game, this element of the combat experience. I mean, dude, break it down. When it comes to raids and dungeons, it's non-existent because you're the only tank there. You're really doing like 2 or 3 different mechanics when it comes to tanking. You're taunt swapping. You're jumping and leaping away because there's a big-ass AoE on you. You gotta position the boss. There's not really much shit that you have to be in control of when it really comes down to the threat mechanic that couldn't be all preserved and still done with it not being something that we have to artificially inflate or deflate at different points within the expansion based on the gear that we have access to. And who wins by retiring this type of obnoxious ass feature that we have to deal with? Everyone. Everyone. Look at me. Hey, everyone. The tanks do not ever want to fucking lose threat or even have to think about it. I've got 6 other things on my mind trying to stay the fuck alive and group up mobs, deal with interrupts, get kicks, stops, cooldowns, whatever. I'm dealing with cognitive load, and you're worried about if the fucking nameplate is gonna stay red on me or not. They don't want to deal with it. They don't. Ask them. Ask them. Let them lead the design for what you build the role around. Please, I implore you. Damage dealers don't want to deal with it either. They don't want to run away from mobs. They don't want to be in melee and get smacked because they popped all their cooldowns and had a huge burst window, and now they're on the fucking floor because they took 2 white swings from some trash mob. They don't want to do that. They don't want to cast Shadow Meld in the middle of their fucking burst cooldowns. And healers don't want to run for their life. They're already trying to pick up the slack of everyone else in the group who can't press a defensive or pop a personal. Who's pop a personal? It's a guy who everyone should know at this point. They don't want to deal with that shit. They don't need mobs chasing them down, trying to smack them in the fucking face because they're trying to get shields and heals up on their party preemptively before some big ass AoE scream goes out that we can't interrupt, but we've got 3 of them in this pack along with 2 fucking bolters and then 1 mob that jumps over and stuns you when it lands on you, and people keep baiting it on top of you, so you have to keep fucking walking back, and now you're disoriented and all the fucking threat's gone. God fucking what are we doing? Anyway, if you want to show up to another discussion with me, we meet at 7 o'clock on Wednesdays. Hey, just think about this for a second. The BFA tailoring pattern that reduced threat or whatever it was, that got hotfixed months ago. Threat was an issue, and that got hotfixed. The threat just got buffed yesterday. Let that sink in. Those are the goons. Those are the goons in charge. Those are the ones. They're the ones that want your damage dealers, when they're popping boners, to get smited down. I wonder what Wowhead's gonna post next week. I wonder if maybe they could buff that belt to increase your threat by 150%.